Wait. Don't get her too, she could walk away.
No, but it's a chance as to comment as a public before she switches sides. No, going once, twice, gone. Next, we have presentation by Dr. Allison Stein for the ESSA update.
We thought that this would be a good time. In about 2 weeks, we should be getting our official notification from the State Board of Education. And we thought the dialogue should start, get you a little comfortable with the terminology. And Allison has put together a really nice PowerPoint that we were able to look at with some of the administrators. So it's her show.
Hi, good evening.
Hi.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. So the purpose of the presentation this evening is to provide you with an overview of ESSA, our preliminary designations, and what's called our official designations. We also want to share with you how we're working together as a school and a district to meet state expectations, to communicate with families about ESSA, and of course to improve student achievement. So that's really the purpose of tonight's presentation. So what is ESSA? ESSA is the Every Student Succeeds Act. It's essentially the reauthorization of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, and it was signed into law in December of 2015. It dictates that individual states must create a plan to ensure that every child is learning and on the path to college and career. So that's what ESSA is. In terms of the Illinois ESSA plan, ISBE, the Illinois State Board of Education, proposes that supporting students begins and ends with equity. And by that, they mean that students with the greatest needs deserve the greatest share of resources, and that each child must have what he or she needs to become socially and economically secure. The Illinois plan is revisited every 4 years. With those big ideas in mind, the Illinois State Board of Education has outlined some very ambitious goals to drive the Illinois ESSA plan. So to begin, kindergartners must be assessed for readiness. 100% of our English language learners must achieve English proficiency within 5 years of identification as ELL students. All students must be supported by highly prepared and effective teachers and leaders. And finally, every school must offer a safe and healthy learning environment for students. There are also goals that must be reached within a 15-year timeline. You can see them posted for you on the screen. Namely, 90% or more of third grade students read at or above grade level. 90% or more of fifth grade students meet or exceed expectations or math. And then there's 2 high school measures. 90% or more of ninth grade students are on track to graduate with their cohort, and 90% or more of students graduate ready for college and career. So the big question is, how do we know if we are on track to meet these goals that are dictated by ESSA? And ISBE has identified 3 different ways for us to track our progress. 1, academic indicators. That's the first. The second is school quality and student success indicators. And the third way is that ISBE is measuring our progress by looking at very specific student subgroups. So those are the 3 ways that we're going to measure our progress toward meeting ESSA goals. We're going to begin with academic indicators. Don't worry too much if you can't read the details on this slide. We're going to look at it a different way in a little bit later. So ISBE has identified different accountability measures. 2 of them are the academic indicators, and then finally the school quality or student success indicators. You can see that some measures are for pre-K through 8, that's that first row, while other measures are for high school, grades 9 through 12. Some measures are weighted more than others. The indicators work together to comprise a score for each school. And then the state rates schools, based on that score. So for K-8 schools, in terms of academic indicators, our score would be comprised of PARCC ELA proficiency, PARCC math proficiency, PARCC growth, science proficiency, so that's the Illinois Science Assessment in grades 5 and 8, and English language learner proficiency, and that's measured by Access. So our score for our academic indicators would be comprised by those measures. In terms of the school quality or student success indicators, the state is looking at our chronic absenteeism rate. So that includes students who are absent for unexcused reasons and students who are absent for excused reasons. Both are combined in that score. They don't differentiate. The climate survey, and that data is collected by the 5 Essentials survey. And then there's 3 other measures that are not yet fully defined by the state, and that's fine arts, preschool to 2nd grade, and an elementary middle indicator. We don't really know much about those yet. So, as I mentioned earlier, the state also measures the progress of specific student demographic groups, and the state has identified those groups as they're posted there on the screen. The state measures the performance of each of those subgroups across all of the academic and school quality indicators that I just mentioned. So, for example, how did our English language learners do on PARCC ELA? Or what's the absenteeism rate for our students with disabilities? Okay, so each of the academic measures and school climate or quality measures are put against these student demographic groups to see how we're performing. Now, you have a student subgroup if you have at least 20 students or more in that group. So you might remember No Child Left Behind, AYP, you needed 40 students in those subgroups in order to make a subgroup. Now you only need 20 in a school.
Can I ask you a quick question? 20 in a school, but
Correct.
when you're a district with 6 doesn't, or it is by school?
By school.
Okay.
Okay, that's a great question. So how are we scored? ESSA looks at each school in our district separately and distinctly. So Elementary North will earn a rating or designation that is separate from the designation that Aspen will earn. So each school is looked at differently. For each school, ESSA measures how well our students performed on each of those indicators. And it also looks at how well each student subgroup performed on each of those indicators in each school. You with me? Okay, so I'm going to run through an example.
It's even more complicated.
The
We're
test, did you tell everybody about the test?
The test is in about 20 minutes.
Okay.
It's an essay. We'll run through an example. So if we want to know how well Elementary North students performed on each indicator, we're going to take a close look here. The state first looks at how well students at a given school performed on each indicator. So how did Elementary North students perform on PARCC ELA, on PARCC Math, on the climate survey? What was their attendance rate? Okay, all of those different indicators. Then those scores from Elementary North are compared with how all students in the state of Illinois compared on those same measures. So you want to know if the students at Elementary North performed better or worse than all of the students in Illinois combined. So in this example here, the percentage of students demonstrating proficiency in PARCC ELA at Elementary North was greater than the percentage of all students in Illinois demonstrating that proficiency. So Elementary North earned what the state is calling indicator points. They earned 100 indicator points because they earned better, they earned a higher score than all of the students in Illinois on that one accountability measure, which was PARCC ELA.
Okay, can I ask you a question quickly here?
Yes.
Is it a school all students or will it be by grade level all students?
All students.
All students.
Yes.
So the whole school students.
Correct.
Okay.
Think school. Right?
Yes, think
Everything's
school.
School is the vessel.
Okay.
So it's everything under one roof.
Yes.
Is that okay?
So far, yes.
And then that hasn't. And then the subgroups then are pulled out of.
Yes, we'll go into
It's still
subgroups
under that
next.
roof.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
Except for
Correct.
Town Line Dual Language, it's two
Correct.
separate schools,
So-
even though they're under the same roof.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay, so
Technically. So that's the previous slide.
Yes.
That 100 points. So it's all or nothing. You either get 100 or you get nothing.
No, you can get an incremental amount. And we'll go through that next. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Right now we
It gets
did great.
exciting. You're doing great. So here's why that happens. The indicator points for each measure are weighted, okay, according to ESSA guidelines, and then added to yield what ISBE is calling a school-wide index score. So if Elementary North earned 100 points for PARCC ELA and 85 points for PARCC Math and 75 points for Access ELL and 65 points for absenteeism, those would all be weighted according to ISBE's calculations per ESSA and then added to produce their school-wide index score. So in terms of our preliminary designations, Elementary North earned an index score of 98.06. That is their index score as a school. Once each school has an index score, The scores are compared across grade level bands. So every K-8 school has an index score, and those are all ranked. And the state looks at the bottom 5%, the lowest performing 5%, and looks at those index scores, and that's the threshold that we want to surpass. Okay, so the state's preliminary threshold index score, you see it down there, is 81.144. We want all of our schools to have an index score that's higher than that, because that's the index score of the lowest 5%. So you can see that Elementary North well surpassed the state's threshold score, so they did great.
Allison,
Okay.
do they
Like a-
give you an idea of what the median is, the average?
They don't.
They don't, just
They
the
do
bottom
not.
5%?
Correct. At least not yet.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like a low bar.
Yeah.
You're top 95%, okay.
It gets complicated from here. We'll dive in.
You
There's
don't
more
know.
math coming your
There's
way.
more math. So the indicator points for each subgroup within a school are identified using that same process. So we just looked at the index score for a school. There are now subgroup index scores as well. Okay, so just like our school-wide index scores, we want all of our subgroup index scores to surpass that same statewide threshold. So in our preliminary designations, those are all the subgroup index scores for Elementary North. Okay, and you can see that they all surpassed the threshold. So Elementary North's in great shape for the preliminary designations.
And that threshold was, again, the state 81.144 was the whole state or whole school. It wasn't the
No, the
subgroup
bottom.
It was the
no,
lowest
the bottom 5%. That's what I mean.
Bottom 5%
But that wasn't
of
the
all
subgroup.
students. Correct.
No,
It was
no.
all of them.
Correct.
Right.
Okay.
Correct.
So your
School.
subgroup has to pass
The
all of them.
threshold for
Correct.
all. Mhm.
Correct.
That's what I wanted to, because you
Yes.
Okay.
So like our subgroup, the subgroup of students with disabilities at Elementary North has to outperform all students in the state of Illinois. Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
I have a question.
Sure.
I'll wait.
This is for clarification. Former English language learners,
Yes.
is that would that be a student that starts or enters the district in like an ELL program and then graduates from that program, or I don't know the proper term?
Yes.
5
that would-
years.
Exit.
5 years, they're supposed to go in not speaking, and 5 years come out speaking.
Okay.
Yes. So the state now tracks students who exited ELL programming, and they
Okay.
will soon track students who exited special education programming as well.
Okay.
Those are new subgroups. So,
Another question?
oh, sure.
So the threshold is at 5%.
The lowest 5%.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So then who says we're supposed to exceed that? The state?
ISBE, yes.
Okay, so we as a district could say, we want to be better than 10% or 20%. Can we get those numbers to say
I
that?
don't know. I can ask.
Like,
I
again,
don't
it
know.
seems like a low bar
Jason,
for
the
us.
purpose of the 5% threshold was so that additional state resources could go to those school districts or schools that fall within that 5% or lower range.
Okay.
Yep.
So the idea was pump in resources because we have to find a way to improve.
So that's the equity
It's
part
not
of
the
where the need.
expectation bar.
Okay.
It's the bar.
Oh, okay.
Funding bar.
Because that's what I was reading.
I think that's what you're
That
all
was a good
struggling
idea.
with.
Yeah, I'm
Thank-
aiming to be better than
Yeah.
the bottom 5%.
Yes.
I'm assuming.
We don't
Thank you
have
for
to
getting
worry about
clarification on that, Jason. 'cause
Okay.
I
Right.
was-
Thank you.
So schools with all subgroup index scores that are above the threshold and a school-wide index score that's in the top 10% of schools statewide, the state is designating them as tier 1 or exemplary schools. Okay, so if your school doesn't have any subgroups that are below that threshold score, and if they score in the top 10% school-wide, they earn that tier 1 designation. Okay. In terms of the tier 2 designation, it has schools with all subgroups above the threshold score, but their total score isn't necessarily in the top 10. Okay. They're still commendable schools. Tier 3 schools have one or more subgroup index score that's lower than the identified threshold. So for example, English language learners scored lower than the bottom 5% threshold, or students with special education services scored lower. One single subgroup can move you to tier 3, even if all of your other subgroups are performing at a very high rate. If you have one subgroup that's performing below, you are moved to tier 3. Okay, and that's an underperforming school. And finally, the lowest performing schools are schools with a school-wide index score that's in the lowest 5%. Okay, that's that school-wide all students index scores.
Excuse me,
Yes.
is there a number that's the top 10%? Like, we know the bottom 5% is 81. Do you know what the number is for the top 10?
Well, we only have our preliminary scores right now, our preliminary designations, and they did not release tier 1 or tier 2 schools
so they haven't
with
said that.
preliminary designations. They only released tier 3 and tier 4 notification. And the reason, as Mark suggested earlier, was that those schools could access funding. So the preliminary scores were just to get schools who were designated as tier 3 or tier 4 on track so they could start access funding and doing some action planning to improve student achievement. So we don't know in terms of our preliminary scores if we had any schools that fell in tier 1 or tier 2. We just don't know.
Can I ask a question?
Mhm.
And if this is premature, just tell me, you'll get to it later. But is this a thing where the tier 3 and tier 4 get funding? Does that mean it's taken away from the tier 1 and tier 2? Like, is there sort of a... I'm not saying we'd be incentivized to be in the bottom 5% because that's ridiculous. But I'm just saying, like, you know, the evidence-based funding model is not exactly this, but is it like there's one big pot, and if you're in the top tier 1 or tier 2, we don't get it?
There's been no designation for that. Have you heard anything? No.
No.
As far as the funding being balanced and, you know, okay, we're gonna take from the rich and give
Right,
to the poor.
right.
That's not part of this.
Okay, that's what I was asking.
No.
Thank you.
A separate amount of money was designated for the lowest performing district.
Okay,
I know people in low performing districts who actually want the designation because they're gonna take
Right.
those extra resources
sure.
and try and do something to improve student
Okay.
performance.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds good, thank you.
So there's an application that
No
you can
hurt on us,
complete
yeah.
for grant funds.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, remember also, and I'm not gonna say anymore, but we don't get much from the state,
Oh, I know,
so.
but I don't want the little tiny, the change we leave on our nightstand. I don't want that
That's
taken
not
away.
it. That's truly it.
So our current school designations are preliminary. Official designations will be released at the end of this month, and we're going to talk a little about those in a moment. In terms of our preliminary designations, we have one school that earned a Tier 3 designation. It's the School of Dual Language. If you remember, Tier 3 designations are based on subgroups that fall below the 5%, and only one subgroup fell below the 5%, and that was the subgroup of special education at the School of Dual Language. So we have already been meeting with the administrator at the School of Dual Language. They've completed the application to access funding, and their staff leadership team has already started the process of action planning. So that's already in place from preliminary designations. Okay. So you'll hear ISBE say that the official designations may be different than the preliminary designations, and I'm going to try to explain to you why that might be the case. If you look at the pie chart on the left, that represents preliminary designations. So you'll see that the accountability measures make up the pie chart, and the data is taken from the 2016-2017 school year. That's preliminary designations, okay? The gray parts of the pie are the accountability measures that were not included in our preliminary designations. So student growth, that makes up 50% of our school's score, was not included in preliminary designations, nor was absenteeism or the climate survey. So 75% of the pie that makes up a designation was not included. It was not counted. Instead, we all earned 100% for that 75% of the pie.
Wow.
Okay. So the official designations that are released later this month are from the 2017-2018 school year. It's a different school year. There are different kids. And there's many more accountability measures that count or fill that pie. In fact, the only one missing is the climate survey. And that's because it only became required this year, so they don't have the data from 17-18 to include for our official designations. So the official designations that are released at the end of this month are going to likely be different than the preliminary designations we received in the late summer. This is a different way to look at it. So preliminary designations are on your left, official designations are on your right. You'll notice the bottom 3 rows of the left, the state gave everyone a 100%.
That's nice. Everybody gave
That's
it.
At least we
Makes
didn't
you
all get a
feel
zero.
Right.
So the
Generous.
official ones could really only be less.
Right.
There's only one way to go.
No.
It
'Cause I
really
think-
depends on
Or
how all
equivalent.
schools
Or the
do.
same.
Right.
Yeah.
It really, because the whole crux of ESSA is so dependent on how you compare to others.
Yeah.
So it really just depends on how all schools do. But yes, because everyone earned a 100%.
We could go up if others go down.
So.
Because it's relative.
Right.
The other piece that's different between the preliminary designations and the official designations are the subgroups. So on the left are preliminary. Again, remember it's 16-17. The right is official, 17-18. You'll notice that preliminary designations did not include our low-income population, and they also do not include students who formerly had a disability or were.
But that is not
Identify
included, right? Because you've got it in gray. right
Yes,
now.
it's upcoming,
Okay. So that will be 2019,
perhaps.
probably.
Yes. Yes. Okay.
She's like, are you with me?
Okay. So the official designations are scheduled for release in October, later this month. All designations will be identified later this month. So tier 1, 2, 3, and 4 will all be identified. And the school report cards will include our official designations as well. Okay. Once we have our official designations, we're going to enact our communication plan, which simply means that we're going to send a letter to our families to explain a little bit about what ESSA means, provide some resources should they choose to access them, and enclose a letter from each school. So if you are a parent at Aspen, you will receive a district letter, and you'll also receive a letter from Aspen to let you know what your school designation was and any action planning that's going to be initiated due to that designation. In terms of the staff, we provided staff with an update and explanation of ESSA this fall. Principals also provided them with information last spring, and they know about our communication plan, and our next steps. And as I mentioned before, we've been meeting with the principal of dual language to help support them with their preliminary designation. Similarly, once we receive those official designations, we will celebrate any of our schools that earn a Tier 1 or Tier 2 designation. That will be tremendous, and we'll provide collaborative support to any schools that earn Tier 3 and Tier 4. And what that looks like is district administrators partnering with school administrators and staff leadership teams to make sure they can access the necessary funding, to make sure we're supporting them in their development of their action plans and helping them to progress monitor those action plans. So that's what that will look like. And you will know more as soon as we know more at the end of this month. Do you have any questions? I know that's a lot.
I have a little logistical question here.
Yes.
Can we get a copy of this presentation? Because I think you did a great job making it as clear as possible, but
Sure.
I'd like to go through it one more time. And can a copy be posted? Because I'm getting feedback for the people watching at home. The only view was a view in the clock. It was not a view of the screen.
Oh,
So they actually can't see
Right
what
now,
you're
you
talking about. Yeah.
okay.
So if we could maybe post that presentation,
That's fine with me.
is that possible?
Yes, I actually have a screencastify version that I made for staff.
Okay.
So maybe I can take a look at that, and if it's appropriate, we can post that for the community. That might be helpful.
And you have to remember that over the next couple of weeks, there's going to be a flurry of activity as the state board is already releasing little tidbits and teasers, and every news media source is out to try and put this in some context. Ultimately, we're going to see, again, somebody using this to sell homes or to rank or to something of that nature to try and sort and separate
Mm-hmm.
which is better and which isn't. We don't subscribe to that. We shouldn't subscribe to that.
One of the things is, and it's just a suggestion, we have a curriculum tab on our website, on our district web page itself. And, we could put in this and then whatever updates or reports that we do keep generating, we could just add them onto like that separate tab. So it keeps updating itself so everybody can access it, because with the community that we have, I mean, as you mentioned, if we would send a district letter, but we would send Aspen parents would get that. But I'm sure they'd be curious in knowing what the Town Line parents got or what Elementary North parents got, and it would just be helpful to have, even those letters just uploaded under a new tab so that everybody can see it, and then you get a fewer
Good
calls.
idea.
Because that
A
way
new
it's all
ESSA
up there.
tab.
Easy to
Just
do.
have an ESSA
An
tab.
ESSA tab under curriculum, that'd be
Mhm.
easy. Sure.
And then, we could do it. I had one of the questions, which is more logistical and, which you might have either thought or not. I mean, some of these others are very educational and, action planned, as you said, nothing I could deep dive into. But one of the things that we have definitely dealt with is the chronic absenteeism. And we have a lot of that happens at certain times of the year. So
Right.
we have a plan to educate our parents who do go missing around that time.
Well, I
that
know
they-
principals currently communicate with parents around their students' absence from school. In terms of ESSA, we'll be working on more and different kinds of communication and support for families. We recognize that we have families who must travel out of the country in order to see extended family members and participate in special events. And unfortunately, in terms of ESSA, that does count against us.
Yeah, that's why, I that's
As
what
does
I
a
want.
student who's legitimately ill and homesick from school. Mhm.
And we have to really keep in mind the subgroup size of 20 is small.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't take more than one or two students in a subgroup to not perform well to drag the whole subgroup down.
Mhm.
40, there's some wiggle room. There's not a lot with 20.
Mhm.
No, not making excuses. We'll never make excuses. We'll go for the answer. But that's a real hit. Wasn't graduated. They cut it in half.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
Question on the growth indicator, it's 50%. So we've been told growth is measured in a number of different ways. Is there a standard way that growth is measured for everybody, or do we get to decide?
No, they don't. They decide everything,
Yeah,
and
okay.
they are using the standard growth percentile for Park,
Okay.
which essentially means did my child do the same, better, or worse than other children who took that same assessment last year?
So it is year over year growth. That's what
Mhm.
they're talking
Yes.
about. Okay.
Longitudinal.
Yes,
Except we will say goodbye to Park soon. so.
correct.
One step at a time.
Yeah. Don't get too wedded to that
Yeah.
Park idea.
Yes. So it's interesting because they just released standard growth percentile scores for schools, but they didn't release the all student score for Illinois, as far as we can find it. So we can't really make much meaning out of it yet, but we will soon.
On one of the first slides, I believe it was, I don't know if it was the goals or requirements of ESSA.
Yes.
One is assessing students for readiness in kindergarten.
That's kids. That's the kids assessment.
Okay, so is that done by the district?
Yes.
Okay.
It's required by the state of Illinois, so I think this is our second year.
Is that just like a paper form that's sent home?
It's an observational tool.
Check this.
So, so kindergarten teachers have look-fors, and as the students learn through play, they make notes or collect artifacts or evidence regarding the student's developmental progress, and then during a plan time, they enter all of that information into a database that's uploaded to the state.
Okay, so this is done during kindergarten.
Correct.
So
It's
it's
not
not
something
what I was
separate.
asking.
It's not an add-on.
I thought it
It's
was something like-
look-fors during learning time.
Oh, okay. Okay, I
Mhm.
didn't know if it was something that was done before a student entered kindergarten.
what I
It
was
seems
asking.
like it would be,
Okay.
based on how they've chosen to title it and
Right.
explain it, but it actually is done within the first 40 days of kindergarten.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
Gotcha.
Great.
Good question.
Thank you.
Yes.
Well done.
Good job,
Okay.
Allison.
Thank you.
Thank you
you.
so much.
Well done.
Please contact
It really helps in understanding it, though. I can see.
Remember your applause because.
I think you'll be back having to
It's special.
explain this again, but.
Thank you very much.
That's
Thanks
why I
for
need to go
sticking
through the
with me.
presentation
Yes,
again.
great first presentation.
So
Thank you,
believe it or
Alice.
not-
Good job. Thank you.
The target date for dissemination of the squares is the 31st, Halloween. So I've heard that may change. Have you heard anything?
I also heard Halloween.
Yeah, so
All right.
be ready. It's a trick or a treat.
No tricks.
No,
No
no.
tricks.
I have the next item on the agenda is President's report. The only report I have is we have our first mailer went out with the community engagement dates and for referendum information dates. Our next one is tomorrow at 6:30 at Elementary North. So I would, anybody who's watching, you're welcome to come and attend and ask us questions and help understand anything that hasn't been made clear or is still confusing. We have 4 more. Tomorrow is the first one, and then we have one at Middle North, one at the at the Aspen Library, and then one at the Village Hall. So we have those. So that's about it. All the sheets, everything is uploaded. The referendum website is getting updated. It has the presentation that we are doing at the community meetings itself live. Not live, sorry. It's recorded out there. So you can look at the presentation. You can send us the questions from the presentation if you can't attend in person. All the space constraint videos out there. All the tabs are working and functional. So you can go on to that and access them. If you have any questions, please send us your emails and we will go with it. The next is Superintendent's report, Dr. Porto and Dr. Friedman for the space impact
Joe's
options.
gonna handle it.
Allison burnt it out, huh?
She was smoking.
Fire.
Oh boy.
But that was a really, really good presentation to understand it because I've read some of the materials that kind of came through ISB and I could not make head nut.
Yeah, it
out of
was.
Don't even read that stuff.
Yeah.
It's in layman's terms.
I didn't even know it was English. It was going round and round.
So, as you know, when we decided as a board to launch our information campaign regarding the referendum, we did it around 4 questions. What are the needs? What is the plan? What's the financial impact? And then this last one that we want to target a little discussion today. What happens if the referendum does not pass? It's awkward to talk about. You don't want to think about it. It sometimes gets misunderstood in the community. Sometimes people think that to even talk about it is heavy-handed or scare tactics. But what it really is another important component of our right and responsibility to get the information to the community, because there is a consequence of it passing and there's a consequence of it not passing. So I wanted to take you through this very short PowerPoint and launch an initial discussion. I want to make it really clear that it's premature to be even thinking about making any decisions tonight, but I did, and Mark did, and Sonali, when we talked, we thought it was important to at least launch the discussion about what's going to be on the table and what options you are going to have to deal with if the results are a no on November 6th. So the first thing, and you're all well aware of this, but I thought it was important just to set context before the conversation tonight, is, well, what is the current reality? The current reality is that we have instruction going on in locations that were not designed for that purpose. And examples abound in the district. There's 4 different kinds of classes and 4 schools that are actually happening on a stage. Of course, the purpose of a stage is not a classroom setting, it's a drama setting. We have band and orchestra in a converted kitchen at a elementary south. The infamous PE classes happening in the hallways of our middle school south. An overcrowded choir trying to be a choir in a small cafeteria. There is art on a cart. There is health on a cart. There's ELL classes happening in the library and the computer lab, which are designed for other purposes. And a big one throughout the district, at least at 3 schools, we have special ed and ELL classes being held in spaces that were originally designed to be offices, small rooms, and in some cases even storage. The other thing we have going on in the current reality is instruction in limited, overcrowded areas. In other words, yes, gym is taking place in a gym, but 4 classes are there instead of 2 because they're having to double up. So some examples of where we've got the right things in the right places, but just way overcrowded. Again, the choir is at Middle School North is in a choir room, but if you've ever walked in there, it's designed for about half of the kids that sign up and would like to be part of choir. The PE is done with multiple teachers using limited space. So a very common practice is 2 or 3 gym classes doubling up in a space designed for 1 or 2. It increases the likelihood of accidents, and it also, in all of these cases, when classes are happening where either they're not designed to happen or in overcrowded spaces, it completely restricts the curriculum options. Just a real quick example of that, art on a cart just about eliminates half the art curriculum when art is on a cart and you don't have access to clay and sinks and paints and all the kinds of things that a deeply enriching art class should have. There's also music with multiple teachers sharing limited space and combined gym and cafeteria. The poor elementary north has such a small space they could hardly have a parent meeting or an assembly where all the kids can actually see. The other part, 2 more quick parts of the current reality, quick but important. We do have 1 mobile classroom unit that's being used for music. Being used for music and ELL offices. Finally, maybe for us educators and parents, very concerning, PE classes routinely above 30, some regular classes above 30 in some core subject areas, and we have topped 35 students in a class at both middle schools and our advanced classes. And none of that is for budgetary purposes, totally reliant on space. So that's just a quick current reality. If the referendum does not pass in November, you're going to have to probably start deliberations in December because the options that are on the table are complicated. They're going to involve some more in-depth research. You might want to need some more communication with the community, and it's going to take some time. And the first thing you'll have to do is probably answer these 3 questions. First of all, is the status quo, what I just shared with you right now, is based on no increase in student enrollment? In other words, if not a single new student enrolled between right now and next year, all of those same issues would still be there. The space need is right now. It's not based on future enrollment. So the first question you're going to have to ask yourselves is the status quo acceptable? And is it sustainable? Then, if you decide as a board, this status quo is not acceptable, and nor do we think it's sustainable, then you're going to have to decide what options are there to consider. And then, if we do get enrollment increases, it would exacerbate the current conditions that I just shared. And you would then have to ask the questions, what additional options are going to need to be considered? Okay, we're not here tonight to answer those. Mark and I thought it was very important to just get this out on the table and get you thinking about it, because we will have to start this discussion no later than December, if it happens. So, what would be on the table for you to talk about if you decided that the status quo was unacceptable or not sustainable? Well, one thing you could do is add more mobile classrooms. Your architects last year did a task, I think you asked them to do this, is if you were to meet all of the space needs based on our current population and our projected population, how many mobile units would you need in the district? The answer was 20.5. Now, that doesn't mean you would have to go with 20.5, but if you wanted to meet every need that we have in the district, that's how many mobile units that it would take, at least over the next 3 years.
Does that even meet every need?
No,
I mean, it
because
meets classroom need.
it
but
would
not
meet
gym,
classrooms, but it
cafeteria.
wouldn't meet gyms and assemblies and choir and chorus. They don't make mobile units really
Right.
that size. The cost, just to let you know, I think you guys know this because you have been supporting one at Elementary South. The cost is $142,000 for the installation, getting it there, getting it installed, and hooking up the utilities. And then on top of that, there's a $13,800 yearly lease. So it's not an inexpensive proposition. Just to get you thinking about the kind of discussion you're going to have in December, Mark and I brainstormed some pros and cons. The pro is the mobile units would be the easiest thing to do. They'd be the most efficient solution. The class sizes wouldn't have to be touched, and that's a big issue for you. And it would maintain all programs, but as Robin mentioned, it wouldn't solve some of the issues, so there would still be a need for some modified curriculum. The cons, the cost would exacerbate our deficit, which is already a concern for the district. Many residents view them as unsightly, and our village has expressed a concern even about the one that we have, let alone any more. They're actually, the State Board of Education views them as kind of a last resort. They're supposed to be used as only a temporary solution. So you usually see mobile units when a district has identified a bubble. We just have to get through the next 5 years till this bubble of high population and a couple of grade levels goes through. But in a pattern where where there's already overcrowding and there's no relief in sight, that's really not what mobile units are designed for. And then there's challenges, as you've all noticed, with safety, security, bathroom access, getting out there in the winter, all of that stuff. By the way, as I go through the options to consider, I think you'll also need to remember that no single one of these would probably answer the needs. If it comes to this and we're making these tough decisions, it's probably going to be a combination of a couple of these, if not all three. So it's not an all or nothing. Next option to consider, raise class sizes. So I asked Lynn to put together this chart for me, and I wanted to thank her for that. Right now, we don't have set in stone class size limits, but we have community norms and board precedent. And right now, we usually don't like to have our kindergarten more than 25. We get uncomfortable when our first grade, second grade, third grade starts to be 27, 28. We get a little uncomfortable, and we don't like our middle schools to veer too much further than 30. So the first thing I asked Lynn, it's the second column. Well, what if we raised our threshold for K3 to 28, and we made 4th through 8th 30? just arbitrary, just wanted to see what would happen. That would free up 6 classrooms, K3, 1 classroom, 4-5, and 6 classrooms in the middle school. Okay, what happens if we take it even further and we increase the class size and we just do 30? Our class size, we're willing to go up to 30. That frees up 17 classrooms throughout the district. Now, as you could probably figure out, though, it's not balanced where these classrooms get freed up. Some of the schools that might need them the most won't free up as many, and some schools that don't need them get freed up. So it's a little bit misleading. It's not like automatically there'd be 17 new rooms that we'd be able to put to good use right away. Yeah,
Dr. Burr,
jump in.
do we even, in some of our classrooms, are they even large enough to have 30 kids? I mean, I know teachers that have, they've decided to, remove their desks from their classrooms in order to free up more space.
I would say, honestly, you could make it work, but would it be ideal? Absolutely not.
Okay.
And the older the kids get, the bigger they are. And so 30 and 35 middle schoolers really make it tight in a classroom. Pros and cons. If you were to do this, it would be the least costly option to do. And in fact, it would alleviate a big chunk of your budget deficit. But
if we were
it-
looking at 30 in like K through 3, would we be looking at adding aides to classrooms, or would it just be one teacher to a ratio of 30 students?
That would all have to be part of the conversation, Julie. Yeah. This is just looking at freeing up space. As soon as you start putting the teacher assistants in there, it would certainly help with the educational piece of it. But it
Then
would
there's a lot more
increase the
body in there.
costs, right?
Yeah.
You wouldn't
There's
capture
body
any
and
savings.
cost. There's two things.
The cons, it's still, this is just what Robin said earlier with the mobile units. Even if we were to do this and free up those 17 rooms, it still doesn't solve all the needs. It doesn't create a place for the chorus and choir to meet. It doesn't create new gyms. It doesn't help with a big assembly. The bigger spaces, this would not address. So again, it could be part of a partial solution or a combination solution, but even if you did the draconian, the 30 across the board, you would still have space issues at each school. Also, there'd be definitely a negative impact on student achievement, definitely staff morale, and this means a lot to parents, parent communication, parent satisfaction. And obviously, if you're raising class sizes, you're firing teachers. So this would also result in many staff members losing their jobs. So that's what class size raising would do for you. Finally, there's just one more. The other thing you could do is either eliminate or reduce programs. Reducing enrollment in band, orchestra, and chorus would definitely be on the table for you because some of those programs are literally at their peak because of the space we have them in. Elementary South is having their orchestra in a converted old kitchen, and I was personally in where the chorus meets in the middle school north and in the cafeteria at the other middle school. And so you can still have the programs, but you might have to put caps on the enrollment, how many kids you could take in these programs. Another thing you could do that would be involved in reduction would be to cut down PE, for instance. Right now, it's 5 days a week. You can move that down to 2 or 3. That could make a positive impact. Of course, there's pros and cons to that too. The positive impact on space, it would eliminate some of that doubling up that we talked about and multiple teachers in smaller spaces. The other thing that could be talked about as well is to reduce or eliminate your fine arts programs. you wouldn't have to worry about art on a cart if there was no more art. So again, I'm not making any value statements here. I'm just laying out the options that will be on the table in December for you to consider. And so if you did cut art, music, some enrichment, some other programs, along with raising class sizes, those would free up some classrooms across the district. So, boy, just personally, none of those are fun to talk about. But we have to be realistic. And Robin, I know you felt it was really important to at least have a start of this discussion. And this is what Mark and I were able to put together, at least at this point in time.
Thank you. I think one thing that is worth mentioning about this last option is the only way to do that fairly is to do it to every single school, regardless of whether that school is having space constraints
That's
in
correct.
that particular area.
That's correct.
So I think that's important. for
And you know
people
what
that-
else, too, Robin, if I could piggyback?
Yeah.
Same with raising class sizes.
Absolutely, right.
There's some schools that don't have as big a space
Right.
needs, like Aspen, for instance.
Right.
But if you're going to raise class sizes to 30 across
Right.
the district, you can't have a school or two that don't feel that same impact. I know equity has been an extremely important concept for this board.
One question I had is I just wanted to know if you and Mark had talked about the possibility of something, and hear me out before everybody jumps down my throat. The possibility of something where it would require us moving neighborhoods year to year, that being a yearly evaluation of where we place students. I know it's done that way in other countries. Other parts of the country. I have a niece and nephew that go to school in Tennessee, where everything in Tennessee is county-based. And there is no guarantee that you will be placed at the same school each year. It's kind of based upon where there's development and busing and all the rest of it. So they try to keep you the same place, but there's no promise, and you don't get a choice in the matter. Have you looked at a possibility like that in order to at least sort of spread this issue across the district?
I'll be
Or
totally
evenly?
honest, that is not an option that I have explored in any way. Mark, I don't know if
No.
you've looked at that.
Okay.
However, I think the purpose of this is to just throw out on the table
Right?
that there's going to have to be some thinking out of the box
Mhm.
if this does not pass.
Mhm.
So there is no such thing as outlandish or.
Right.
If that's something that we'd investigate, we would investigate it. But it wasn't a topic that
Okay.
we
I just didn't know if you had thought about it and dismissed it for certain reasons.
Those boundary change issues are very close to the heart for many parents.
Oh, believe me. I am
Extremely
famous
emotional
for fighting
issue.
boundary changes.
Yes.
And I'm not
Okay,
sure it
so-
would solve our problem because where that's been done is where there's really been several schools super overcrowded and other schools with, lots of space.
Right.
While we have some that aren't as overcrowded as others, it's not like we have any school that's just sitting there with tons of extra space.
Right. Okay.
But I agree with Mark.
Put it in the
I
mix.
think when December comes, if we have to have this discussion, I think everything's on the table.
Okay.
And I do think the solution will have to be a creative one that involves a combination of decisions. Is there any other ideas that we may have missed here that you would like us to do any research on or at least prepare for? We
I
tried to
think
take the
key
most
is,
common.
Here's what's going to happen, a discussion. So that's really the next step.
Right.
There may be, after this, and reviewing this list, there may be a lot of things come to your mind. Write them down and
Yeah,
save them.
And let us know.
And
Be happy to start
potentially, I
working.
gotta be very careful. I say this, potentially we won't need them, but yet we'll have them should that have to happen.
Fuzzy math. 20 and a half mobiles
I
are
think
3 million.
half a mobile.
$3.2 million a year.
Yeah.
This kind of got
Is that counting the fee, the yearly fee
That's the
too?
fees too, and I'm sure that's fuzzy.
did that
Did-
Mhm.
And
It's
I'm
probably
assuming it's probably
depending
just
on the
electric, it's
size.
not water, because
No.
I know like we didn't run water to the one because
No.
it was way too expensive.
No, it's strictly electricity.
Yeah.
right there.
And I know you talked about enrollment at the last meeting, because I watched it while I was on vacation. And it's down. What I wanted to say when you were talking at the last meeting, and I wasn't here, it's down. I saw a comment that was completely inaccurate on social media saying that kindergarten was down 100 kids, and that was completely false. So I wanted to clear the air on that. If we've been doing rolling enrollment from June of 2017 to last Friday, and this is not including Lincoln or outplaced or special services kids, because I did not have the data for those for that amount of period. You're actually only down 6 kids. 6 kids. So when
We
you,
have 7
that's
schools.
yeah. So to hear something like that where a kindergarten is down 100 kids was completely inaccurate, and I wanted to get that cleared out.
Matt, are you trying to tell us that not everything on the internet is true?
Yeah, so that's my other point is, if you have questions, go to these engagement meetings because you will get the correct data. Don't read everything on social media because it's not right.
Can I piggyback on that for 1
Sure.
second? Because I know which comment you're talking about. The other problem with a comment such as that is if we had looked at just 1 year of growth and went to the community and said, we need to put on additions and give us $48 million, we've had 1 year of growth, everybody would have said, what? After 1 year, it's an N of 1. Well, this is not even an N of 1 because it hasn't been 1 year. So even if enrollment was down 100 kids, you don't do it based off 1/12 of a year, which is
Right.
1 month of enrollment.
Right.
So
And
that's
that
sort of
was-
the problem is we don't go, let's ignore the growth from 1982 through 2018 and just look at September of 2018.
Right.
That's not a responsible way to make decisions, especially when common sense says there's new development. You know, at the September 11th meeting I had with the village, there were 2 people enrolled from the new Melody Farm apartments. Now there's 12 people enrolled. I mean, Cuneo had sold 4 homes at the time. Now they've sold, I don't know, somewhere between 15 and 20. Like, there's growth. So
The fact of the matter
common
remains.
sense would tell us the dip in enrollment, even if we were seeing a dip in enrollment,
Right.
whether it's 6 kids or 100, isn't sustainable right now.
And
We're
the-
back to where we were 3 years ago, which was still 350 some odd kids,
Right.
more than what we can handle. But
Right.
that was where I saw that comment, and there was some enrollment discussion in the last meeting, and I was like, that needs to be, as you said, corrected. If there's inaccurate information out there, it needs to be corrected.
Right.
So these are still very live talking points that we have to clearly get to. So I'm glad you brought that up at the last meeting too. I'm done. I'm off my soapbox.
Anything else?
Yeah.
That's okay.
Is that enrichment referring to like the language arts and math enrichment for the elementary grades, or what is that referring to?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So the pullout that they get right now.
Well, and as it is now,
Because they're on stage, right? At
Right.
least
Or-
in town line,
Yeah,
they're
town
on
line,
stage.
yeah.
For the past 4 years, they've been on stage.
or in
know.
the hallway.
Yeah.
You know.
Or in libraries
Let's
seem
put
to
it
be the
this way, We
3.
don't want to be at a point where we start in December and we have meetings to discuss which of those goes. You don't want that.
Yeah, no, I don't.
So.
I don't want to talk about any of that.
Yeah, and there won't be a nice peaceful crowd that will be, in a gym somewhere, because that will turn on a lot of people. We're hoping to stave that off.
Me too.
Mhm.
Nobody's letting me campaign for it, but me too.
But I just also thought it was such an important, I'm really glad you pushed for it, Robin, because I have been involved in a neighboring district where a referendum failed and the community went back to the board and said, you never told us what you were going to do if it failed. If we knew these things were going to happen, we would have, voted differently. So I do think it's important, even though we can't be specific yet, to at least be honest. These are the things that will dominate our discussions. Thanks,
Okay.
you guys.
Thank
So
you.
thank
you.
Is this going to be available on our site?
We'll put it up there tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll put it under the 4th section of the website.
Yep, perfect, thanks.
Yeah, go ahead.
as we continue on with the superintendent's report one, remember this is the committee of a whole right now, folks. This isn't the regular board meeting. Want to know, did you get your VIP pass from Mundelein High School? I can't say enough about how much reach out we've had from the folks at the feeder districts and Mundelein High School. They have all of our referendum information. They're all willing to speak their own word because many live within our community. And so this is a nice little gesture. You get to go to any event in any game and bring somebody as a VIP person at any Mundelein High School events.
That's nice.
So,
Oh, very nice.
unless they bring in like Paul McCartney or something.
I'm going.
Yeah.
Then, yeah, then gotta get behind Joe. But a nice gesture. It was
Thank you,
just very
Mundelein
nice
High
of them.
School.
Yes, thank you so
Thank you.
much. It's very nice.
Oh, I'll do that later. You don't have anything, so I adjourn the committee of the whole meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
Any
It was
oppo-
voted.
The regular meeting.
Any opposed? Meeting adjourned, 6 ayes, 0 nays. I call to order the business meeting for the Board of Education. Can I just do all in favor?
Yeah.
All in favor?
Well, you're supposed to have a roll call vote for, when
Okay.
you convene the regular meeting of the Board of
Okay.
Education.
Can I have a roll call, please?
Jason Tron,
Here.
Julie Simpson,
Here.
Robin Cleek,
Here.
Wes Pullen here, Matt Jacobs.
Here.
Sonali Patel.
Here. 6 present, 0 absent, and we get to seat and welcome our new board member, Ms. Victoria Helander-Heiser.
Come on up. Well, so typically, in a situation like this, you're administered the oath, and the board president will administer that oath to you if you'd like to approach the table. And Mrs. Patil will.
Do we have another one for her to read? By her folder.
Well, that's.
Can you give her? Just in case.
Repeat after
Cheat
me.
sheet.
The President Pro Tem of the Board of Education, okay, I,
Shall I go ahead and read this, or just
Yeah.
that part of it?
yeah, just your name.
State your name.
Oh,
Say it.
okay. Victoria Helander Heiser.
Do solemnly swear
Now I should continue? Oh, do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office
that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office
of member of the Board of Education
of member of the Board of Education
of Hawthorne School District 73
of Hawthorne School District 73
in accordance with the Constitution of the United States,
in accordance with the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and the laws of the State of Illinois to the best of my ability.
and the laws of the State of Illinois to the best of my ability.
I further swear that
I further swear that
I shall respect
I shall respect
taxpayer interest by serving as a faithful protector of the school district's asset.
taxpayer interests by serving as a faithful protector of the school district's assets.
I shall encourage and respect
I shall encourage and respect
the free expression of opinion
the free expression of opinion
by my fellow board members
by my fellow board members
and others who seek a hearing before the board,
and others who seek a hearing before the board,
while respecting the privacy of students and employees.
while respecting the privacy of students and employees.
I shall recognize
I shall recognize
that a board member
that a board member
has no legal authority
has no legal authority
as an individual
as an individual,
and that decisions can be made
and that decisions can be made
only by a majority vote
only by a majority vote
at a public board hearing
at a public board
meeting.
meeting.
And I shall abide
And I shall abide
by majority decisions of the board
by majority decisions of the board
while retaining the right to seek
while retaining the right to seek
changes in such decisions
changes in such decisions
through ethical and constructive channels.
through ethical and constructive channels.
Welcome aboard.
You even have your
Chair.
name tag.
Great. Welcome.
So long ago.
That wasn't even 2 years ago.
You weren't repeating that in your own head?
No.
Let's move on.
first item I have is the consent agenda. I'm going to remove the closed session minutes of September 17th, sorry. And you have the closed session minutes in your packet. I'll give you a couple of minutes to review it so that you can take a look at them and then we can vote on them. They're short, so. And I'll have Victoria abstain from those. So the consent agenda item is board minutes of September 17th, 2018, the closed session minutes of September 25th, 2018, closed session minutes of September 30th, 2018, renumbering the item index, and personnel, which is new hires, leave of absence. Do I have a motion?
I move that the Board of Education approve the consent agenda items as amended.
Do I have a second?
Second.
That's
Sec-
Matt.
Matt was that.
Matt. Motion by Robin, seconded by,
No, Julie.
sorry. Motion by Julie, seconded by Matt. Could I have a roll call, please?
Jason John,
Aye.
Julie Simpson,
Aye.
Victoria.
Victoria.
Abstain.
I abstain from this, right?
Right.
Draw a blank, Robin.
Helander Heiser.
Helander Heiser. Okay, I didn't. Okay.
Okay.
Oh, Victoria Helander Heiser. Sorry. I'll have to practice.
She abstained.
Okay, abstain. Okay.
Yeah.
Robin Cleek,
Aye.
West Poland. Aye. Matt Jacobs.
Aye.
Snelly Pratel.
Aye. Motion passes 6 ayes, 1 abstention. That is it for the consent item. We don't have any other action items. President's report. Talking of Mundelein High School, Mundelein High School is having a STEM day. You should go up and look at the website, but the middle schools also have it. They're advertising it. It's specifically for the middle school students. Next Saturday is the PSAT 8-9 for all our 8th graders who are going to entering high school as placement test. So good luck to all our 8th graders for Saturday. Sleep early, eat a good breakfast, and take your calculators. You need them. I had to run at 7 o'clock to Walmart, so don't. There is going to be nobody to open the door for you on Saturday morning if your calculator is not with you. So, but good luck to the 8th graders for their PSATs, 8-9 on Saturday. Please look up for the STEM centers as well as the high school computer club and the science club is always doing something. Please look up your school websites to see the opportunities that they are providing for our students to go over and participate in STEM activities. And the day of coding, they recently did a girls' day of coding and some other activities, fun activities that they have to entice students for learning. That's it.
Okay.
Superintendent's report.
So now we're going to talk a little bit about our superintendent search. And we're really in the home stretch right now. So if you'll recall, 2 weeks ago, we had the BWP consultant team here, and we did some focus groups, stakeholder groups. And in conjunction with that, we ran an online survey. Well, we just got the survey results back after, obviously, our packet was put together. I never like to do handouts at a board meeting, but timing here we couldn't control. So what we have is the online survey only. The profile will consist of the online survey and the information we got on the day in the district. But for purposes of giving you a little heads up, and also we'd like to put this survey on our website, transparency. We want the candidates to be able to see that because we have a really strong candidate pool as of now. And we also want people in the community to see what 500 residents, employees, and others submitted as their answers to the online survey. The number 500 was good. We see 120, 130, 100, something like that. So we did really well, and we did well by our employee groups. About 300 and close to 350 employee groups. So what I thought we should do right now is let's just kind of walk through. You have a color-coded copy. I'm not going to read through everything, just highlight a few things. And then we'll have that on, we'll get that posted this week so that it'll be accessible if anyone wants to see it again, anybody in the audience, community members, and again, of course, candidates. So to keep time at a minimum, let's look at the first page. There's a breakdown as to who responded. I am not employed by Hawthorne District 73, 87 people. I am employed by District 73, 334 people took this survey, which is good. The urgings of our administrators really paid off because I know our principals made a special effort to try and make their staff members take a minute or two to do this survey. So, and we had a couple of you even do stakeholders and do this. So that's excellent. And we did get a few retired folks, and we had people whose children no longer are in the district, as well as people who have children in the district. So it's kind of telling, and as you get a little free time, take time to look it over. Page 2, if you're employed by District 73, specify your position. So 77% almost were teachers. We had, I think we had just about every administrator in the district respond, 13, and other certified staff and support staff. So it came up to 338. Nice number, very nice, we're very pleased with that. So the next question, the next probe on the survey was, from the list given, the 3 most significant strengths of the district are. So, considering the percentage of respondents being employees, it wasn't so surprising to see 78% felt that excellent teachers and staff were the number one significant strength in the district. Not so surprising. But a lot of other numbers were actually fairly close. So, location of the district, supportive community, supportive parents, reputation of the district, academic achievement, culture in the district, they all had good representation. So if you look down this list, you'll see the things that people thought were the greatest strengths. It's interesting, the things that they didn't think were a great strength. It may have something to do with the referendum. The financial management was not one. I think it's unfair, but I'm not sure everybody really totally understood that. It's a way to say, hey, why are you asking for a referendum? By the way, ask any questions if you want. Page 4 is just a percentage breakdown with numbers to those questions, the ones that received the most response. And again, almost 500 people decided to answer those probes. If you notice, sometimes somebody just doesn't answer. So that's why the same round number isn't the same for every question. Question 4, and that's on page 5. Select from the list below the 3 most important skills you would like to see in a new superintendent. So this is really interesting and really telling. Really high number for leadership skills. So people are searching for leadership. They want that person to be a true leader who expresses that leadership in everything he or she does. The second was strong communication skills. Everyone would like to be communicated with. They want to know what's going on. If you're an employee, you're a parent, you're someone with no children in the schools, that type of thing is really important to folks. And then the next piece was financial skills, and those 3 really stood out. So what does this tell us? It tells us that when you do interviews for this important job, that you will ask people about their financial skills and the financial background. You want to demonstrate, you want to see them demonstrate that they understand school finance and understand what a budget consists of. They're not having to be the expert to do it, but they have to understand what the big picture is. So very interesting. And you see the percentage responses down below. On page 6, 3 most important characteristics you would like a superintendent to exhibit. I gave you one. You didn't get one?
I had it. I just forgot to bring it.
Oh, okay. Unprepared. My partner's unprepared. From the list below, the 3 most important characteristics you would like a superintendent to exhibit. So, interesting as you look at this. Good decision-making, good, strong decision-making, outweighed everything, big time. And then displaying integrity and trust. So a person in the seat of superintendent, he or she has to be one that can generate trust and show integrity in the decision-making that he or she does. It's critical. It's critical for success. And then on the next page, the answer that gained the next most support was being child-centered. And how do you really know that? Look for, when you interview, you're going to want to see those candidates reflect on how do things impact children? How do students play in their conversation with you? If it's all about adults, that may not be something that your community wants. So somebody has to be really cognizant of doing things with children and students in mind. So a lot of other areas, active listener, good collaborator, team builder, they had some good hits there too. But a couple of things really did stand out. And you were asked those things individually if you had an individual interview, and some of the same kinds of things came through there. So people pretty much on the same wavelength. On page 7, again, the breakdowns. And then on page 9, indicate whether you believe the item is extremely important, or not important in the new superintendent, for the new superintendent. So the things that seemed extremely important: experience as a superintendent with a proven record of success. 67%, almost 68% felt that that was extremely important. And then if you add important to that, you had 90+% ranking that pretty much the highest. Experience as a classroom teacher, I think that reflects some of the fact that we had a lot of teacher respondents, but it's one that we see a lot in searches where people want that background. They want that background as a classroom teacher, and they want that background as a principal. And you see here, 42% thought it was extremely important, and 48% thought it was important that that person have experience as a principal. So these are things that when you get down to splitting hairs, so to speak, these can help determine which direction you ultimately go in your final selection. Experience in a multicultural environment, another critical piece. You saw that was 90+%. And experience in strategic planning. So there, again, 90-something%, almost one of the highest. So you see those things that really stand out, that people are saying, you've got to focus on all of this. This is sort of like a cheat sheet for when you interview. You can check off, yeah, I see these things in there, and I see these things in there. So this is, again, one more piece to this whole puzzle. And then finally, what are the 3 most important issues or concerns facing the district in the next 5 years? Well, funding, if there's a district in the state that doesn't check that off, I'd be surprised. It really does gather a huge response. Facilities and enrollment growth.
Nailed it.
Bingo.
Yep.
You know, this is really what we're facing right now, and 500 people who did the survey are
sorting that out very heavily. So in color, which gives you a really good view of how this looks and how this is spread out. Here's a partial overview of what your community is telling you in a really nice response, in a nice way. And we have to, Leslie's not here tonight, but Leslie did a lot of work in the background, making sure that we got all the information out and that we had constant reminders, and I'll have to really pat the principals on the back for encouraging their staff to do the survey. This was anonymous. No one followed up to see who wrote what answer. If somebody had something that was negative, it just went into the whole mix. The survey was put together by someone in South Carolina who has no idea where Vernon Hills is, other than to Google it. So it's truly pure and clean. And it's a good start for us. Now, we have some other things, some other business to do with this search. Would you believe the end of the month is the cutoff point for applications? We, like I said earlier, we have some strong candidates. Several of them are very concerned about their name being floated around because they have good jobs. They're not unhappy where they're at, but they see District 73 as a really good place to go to their next career move. So we're keeping the names as tight as we can. We told you about that early on. And after the closing of the applications on the 12th of November, the first screenings will take place. The BWP team will screen out probably 10 to 12. From there, we'll be looking at 6 final candidates and ready for the board to go after that. So what do we need next is we need dates. And I know this is a very difficult thing. We could do it in the open. We could send a doodle. We can do a lot of different things. But philosophically, let's talk about how do you think you'd like to do it? Would you prefer you're going to do 6 folks, 1 hour to 1 hour and 15 minutes apiece? Would you prefer to do them on consecutive nights, 2 or 3 a night? Would you prefer to do it on a Saturday or a Sunday all day? Would you prefer to do it a Friday night and a Saturday morning? There's a lot of configurations for this. And there is no right or wrong. It's the one that works best for all of you. And as you look at busy schedules. Now, we can present the slate. So give you the names, walk through the workshop for training you to do interviews. You can do that prior to the board meeting on the 26th of November, if we can fit that in. So the board meeting is scheduled at 7. If we could meet, is it possible that one night, 5 o'clock-ish? All we'll need is 2 hours. Then you'll have all of that, or we'll have to do that on a separate night. Can you do that on one night, Jason?
Yeah, we can make it happen.
It saves you a meeting.
It saves you a meeting, yes, Joe's right. If you can save everybody's calendar again one more time, then this is better.
On November 26th,
November 26th.
You want it for the workshop, right?
Workshop, present the slate, and review the final profile,
Okay. And it'll be a 2-hour meeting?
at the most. An hour and a half to 2. Depends on how many questions there are.
Okay.
Bless you.
Bless you.
Those of you who haven't done it before, you'll have a few more questions. There are some real issues here that you gotta be careful about. Then, we need 2 more dates. We need a series of dates or a date to do the first round of interviews. And that would really reflect on all of you. And then we need another date or 2 dates for the final 2 to either have a dinner meeting or a second round of interviews here. Remember, most of the stuff we try to do off campus to protect people's identities so no one runs into a person walking, oh, what are you here for? Oh, I'm just interviewing for the superintendent. Kind of gives them away. So we really try to put everything we possibly can in a place where it's a little more privacy.
I mean, I would try to suggest possibly something later that week, the 29th, the 30th. is one of the dates.
Isn't that, when is Thanksgiving? Well,
The
22nd.
before.
I wouldn't do it on Thanksgiving. I'm not that.
Yeah, it's the
mean.
week after
I
Thanksgiving.
don't
Yeah,
know.
Thanksgiving's early, sure.
I mean, I am that mean, but I wouldn't do that anyway.
Well, what do you think? Do you think you want to do 2 nights with 3 each night? Do you want to do 3 nights with 2 each night? Do you want to do a
Victoria.
Saturday? Welcome to the club.
Well,
Get your calendar out.
no, I've got it. If we're looking at preferences, just having been down this path a few times, you just get so much information, and I know it's an extra night, but there is a benefit to doing 2, 2, and 2, and
Yeah.
give you a chance to process and give all of us a chance to process and think.
I'm okay with that. I mean,
I
this is a
agree with
And you
Victoria.
can do 2
really big
nights and a
decision.
Saturday morning. You can do
Yes.
2 nights and a Sunday morning, or Saturday
Wow.
afternoon. So
Victoria's
you,
first comment, and we all agree.
Perfect.
We made a good choice.
it gives you a little more time if you're going and you're really interviewing and things are rolling. You hate to cut the person off. You want to keep that going. Well, 2 per night allows you to do that.
Yeah.
So
When you
I'm-
said an offsite, where would you, like,
Well,
you would,
the first round of interviews we'll do here.
okay,
The screenings will be done off-site.
okay,
So that's where you have a much larger pool. The 6 people that you will interview, you can do here.
okay.
There'll be evenings. If we have a stalker, taking pictures.
That'd be super weird.
Yeah. Yeah.
People need
And
better
this
things
is,
to do.
we joke a little, but these are people's careers. And nothing can hurt a career more than to go look at a job, not get it, and have everybody in your home district find out
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
think, well, what's wrong with us?
Mm-hmm.
So we're here to try and protect candidates as well as the board.
Okay,
My only thing that's around that time period whatsoever is my daughter is in a play on December 4th and 5th. So those are my only 2 nights in that entire kind of next month that I absolutely can't do. But if we want to do the 29th or the 30th as one of the nights or both, I can do that. And then going into December,
okay. Robin, December 4th and 5th is your
those are the
strict
only
no.
2 that I can't do.
Okay. Julie, do you have a strict no on anything?
Not at this time.
Victoria? Jason?
Not that I know of at this time.
Not at this time.
I know I have something, but I don't know the time yet, so I can't.
But okay, just tell the date.
It could be any time between Friday the 30th and Sunday the 2nd.
So,
We have a gymnastics meet sometime that weekend. We won't know until
Well,
probably
so it's
2 weeks
November
before.
30th
So
through December
I'm not going to block anything off.
to
I'll-
December what? 2nd, you said?
I don't have. I've been to enough gymnastics meets. Sorry, girls, but I can miss one if need be.
Okay.
Julie,
Okay,
sorry.
that's the answer.
Wes?
I have a conflict that weekend,
Which weekend?
the 30th, 1st, and 2nd of, so 30th of November, and then 1st and 2nd.
Okay, so that
December.
helps out Jason and you.
Okay.
I said I could make it work.
No, but she has a
But if she
conflict.
has-
too.
Okay,
it's
well,
fine
we
as
can
well.
blame
And
it
I
on
mean-
Wes then.
Blame it on Wes. He's taking the blame. Matt, don't worry
I
about
have
it. We've got
nothing
plenty.
on the calendar that week.
Okay, so we don't have anything either. So
Don't go breaking
So
any tendons.
let's do it after 5th because all the way from 30th through 5th we have something or the other going on. So we can do,
So is the 30th out? I wasn't sure how
yeah, it's out.
The 30th is out. Okay.
Okay.
Is the 27th,
Well-
28th, 29th out?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
those
mean,
are
can we get
those are
some of this
doable.
started?
Yeah.
Well, incidentally, for the 30th, I just need to go back and look at my schedule at home for dance
Yeah, we can do it.
because it's a dress rehearsal for my daughter's Nutcracker performance. So as
How
long as I
about we
get them
do
dressed,
6th, 7th,
dropped
8th?
off.
How about we do 6th, 7th, 8th? That's a Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. 3 days, do 6th, 7th, and then 8th we can do Saturday morning.
Okay.
3 days, 2 at a time.
That's nice.
Everybody all together,
That's really nice.
so it's no space. We just get it done. Let's do 6th, 7th, 8th?
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have
No, you don't.
No, I don't. No, I don't. I don't have a conflict. I have a question. Okay, I have a question about the timeline. So, how soon after we have these 3 interviews, then would we
Bring the
eliminate?
2 final
Yes.
immediately,
Yeah, as soon as you could.
as soon as you could.
Okay, so like the next week then,
Okay, I have
Or-
a
because
question.
we're encroaching on winter break, and I want to make sure that
True.
I'm here.
True.
So, I'll do what I can to make myself available so that
So
We
could we
don't.
move it up the previous week, like 27, 28, 29?
No, we had a problem with that.
Okay.
No, that was open, but we
Oh.
could do 6, 7, 8. I had a question. I know that deadline for candidates is the 31st. Referendum plays a big role in probably there. So if they, do we want to extend that date by any chance, or?
I thought the candidate deadline for submission was moved down to December 20-something. Did
No,
anyone hear
October.
that?
What?
October 20.
No, submission of, I thought you were
superintendent.
talking about submission for
no,
petitions
no.
to
No,
run.
no,
Not
no,
a petition.
superintendent.
Oh,
He's
oh,
talking about,
I
she's
don't
talking
know
about
what-
superintendent.
Super candidate.
There's deadline for, you mean, submission of applications?
Yes.
Why
It's-
would we want to move it?
I was
could-
wondering because 6th is, it's 6 days later, so does it make a
It really
difference?
won't matter.
It won't matter.
I
Like,
don't
I wanted
think
to
so.
know if the referendum outcome would be a big deterrent for the applicants or, or a big
No.
determinant.
They know what, I mean, they know it could go
They know
either
what we're
way.
facing right now. I mean,
So
Yeah.
I wanted to know if we wanted to extend it for a few more days or something.
It won't matter.
Okay. I mean,
First
it
of all,
still would be
many
before all
people
our
aren't
dates,
all
but,
that aware of it, the referendum piece.
Okay.
They're more aware of the district.
okay. Okay. So it's November 26th for the workshop, December 6th, 7th, 8th for
Round 1.
round 1.
Kind of
Mhm.
just think the next week for round 2.
I was going to say, do we want to set the next week date so we don't all
Yeah.
get busy?
Yeah, so again,
When
we
we have to
mentioned
ask
this.
them.
We mentioned this the last time, and Vicki, you weren't here, but we talked about how to pull off the final 2. We talked about the possibility of meeting the final 2 different nights for dinner each night. Or do you want to go conventionally and just have them back for a second interview? Most boards like to be away a little bit and get to know the person. I don't know, Jason.
That's what we
are
did.
you-
We took them to dinner.
Yeah. That's sort of traditional. You get to see them outside of the formal interview setting. Even though you're interviewing at dinner and you're talking, it gives you a chance to see them in another light. You must see them twice. You can't
yeah.
make a decision.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
until
Or
you see
more.
them twice. Or more if you want.
May I ask a quick question?
Yes.
Is a site visit being planned?
It's not yet. We haven't decided yet. We're at a point right now where we see probably less than 10% do site visits. Social media has made that almost non-existent. I don't even remember the last site visit that we worked with the board on.
Could you
We can do
elaborate
it.
a bit more, Victoria, what a site visit is kind of? and-
Well, you spend
their
some
home
time
district.
in the candidate's district. And I can appreciate the business about, the social media, but there also is something about being in those buildings and talking to those teachers. That's why I was curious
But
as to what
see,
you all had
And
decided.
part of that we can't do due to the
Then they know
nature
they're
of
interviewing.
confidentiality, yeah. So we're limited a little bit on what we can openly do. It's 6 in one and half a dozen in another. I do know some ways, and Joe and I'll kind of come up with some ideas, some ways. If you decide to do a site visit, we do know some ways to do that without exposing the person big time.
We can talk
It's an
about it.
interesting
That's-
idea.
One of the things that has changed in searching, that's a big one. Honestly, I couldn't tell you the last time I saw that. Doesn't mean we can't do it.
While we are with the dates,
Hold on. What time are we starting on the 6th, 7th, and 8th? Sorry.
I don't know, Mark,
So you have
An
2
hour and a
candidates,
half.
you need an hour and 15 minutes per. So if you started at 6, you're out at a reasonable time. If you want to start at 6:30, you're still out at a reasonable time.
Jason? 6:30. You're the one who travels the
He's got
furthest
the
amongst us, so.
When do I eat?
So we're
I'll
doing
see
You
it.
don't.
We can arrange for that.
6, Yeah, December 6th, 7th.
So Saturday night.
I could make
Saturday
6
morning.
work.
Okay.
You said he could make 6 work.
6 o'clock?
So it's
Is
6
that
and
right?
7 because one is a Thursday, Friday, and then Saturday morning. So
Now, is there any thought to, if the first person's from 6 to 7:15, not even starting the next one till 7:45 so they don't run into each other on the way in and
Right.
out?
yeah,
Oh, we'll have a system for that.
Okay,
You don't have to waste that much time in between.
okay, because,
We'll
be
get them come
stash
in
'em.
one way, out the other.
okay.
We've done this many times.
Entrance through the front,
Yeah.
exit through the
okay.
rear.
So 6:30, Jason, 6:15.
I can do 6.
You can do 6.
6,
Thank you,
okay.
Jason.
And then 7:30.
6, and then on the 8th, what
6
time
and
in the morning?
7:30, yeah.
What time in the morning on Saturday? 9:30. Victoria, does
That's
that work?
fine.
9:30.
On
Does
the
that work
8th?
for everybody
Sure.
for Saturday morning?
Soccer's over then, so I'm good.
You never know.
That is true.
Did you say 9:30?
Yeah. 9:30 work for
Yeah.
Saturday? Okay.
Mhm.
It's great to get to nail all these dates down.
9:30 and 11. And then
Okay.
you're done, noonish, and you can then kind of decide at that time who you're moving forward.
Okay,
You'll have time.
Works good. Now, the 2 finalist nights, we have to pick the dates for that. And then the dinner, we'll find a place where there's a private room. We have to post all these, which we will.
do we want to do the 10th? Well, no, the 10th is already a board meeting.
No.
Oh, the 17th is a board meeting.
Oh, don't scare us, yeah.
Wait, how come we don't have a meeting on the 2nd?
We changed
We
it.
only have
remember
one
when did
meeting
We
the
have
in
only
December.
one meeting in
Yeah.
December.
Oh.
We changed it to the 3rd.
Okay,
so
I'm
that
sure
we
I have
could
that down
approve
somewhere.
the,
You can show up.
That's where I
So
come for
you
fun.
do have that week, 10th, 11th.
I would try to
12th.
do it towards the earlier end of the week personally.
Keep it fresh in mind.
It's that, and if there's a candidate we really like, there's chances that other districts also really like them. And I want to make sure that this decision is not done hastily, but that we don't drag our feet for no reason.
Mhm.
Anyone? Bueller?
You want to do 10th and the 12th, Monday and
We don't
Wednesday?
have a board meeting on the 10th?
No,
So then
board
the
meeting is
17th.
Wednesday. 10th and 12th,
Sure.
one night each. Does that work? For everybody on their calendar?
Sure.
10th
Okay.
and what?
12.
10th and 12th for dinner.
Should we plan on another 6 p.m. start?
It's dinner, so
Yeah.
early bird special?
6 p.m. is not that early for
Let's see
dinner
if
for
we
me.
can get the board a discount. I think you're all too young.
5:30.
No, but you figure, I mean, like, you're gonna talk for a while. I mean,
Yeah,
I know,
it's
but
a good
yeah.
couple hours. That's generally how that goes.
I didn't think we'd like sit down and like order everything like right off the bat, so I think it's a good time
Jason,
to start.
6:30.
Either way works.
Fine, we'll compromise at 6:30. How's that sound?
Okay,
Okay.
6:30. Let's go.
Robin, we can have a snack before we go.
You got these, Bobby? I got my notes between
I
Joe,
got
you,
Up
and
at 6 in the
I.
morning.
We'll
My
get
whole
them. We'll
schedule
have
is
I
off.
will
I'm
give it to
starving
you.
by
We
6 o'clock.
We go to
It's
Aspen,
always
so
got
yeah.
a lot.
Yeah.
I
We
got
done?
it.
We
I
good?
got 'em. That's it.
Okay.
So the original intent was to try and have a selection by the 17th, and we should.
Okay.
Okay.
Now, working out the details, that may take a little bit, and the formal hiring will probably be at the January meeting, the first January meeting. But getting all the backup stuff and having all that in place, that'll happen.
So I have a question. If we meet the 10th and 12th, when do we discuss? Like, do we want to
12th.
set, we're discussing on the 12th after that person leaves the dinner table? Okay.
You've got everybody together to try and set a separate
Or we
meeting
can
for that.
also, if we do run late, we have the 17th meeting to discuss the close. We can
Yes,
go into
yeah,
closed
you
session
could.
at that time too. It's right.
Which
Okay.
meeting?
The 17th.
17th is a regular board meeting, so we
Yes.
can post a closed session before or after and just discuss it if we'll end up getting too late or we don't finish our discussion for whatever reason.
Mhm.
Stay sober, people. I'm not talking about at the district office. I'm talking about at dinner.
Okay.
Okay.
We know that will help. That will be, Not a
While we
problem.
are on dates, Bobby, 25th, right? We have the board docs training.
What's that
It's
one?
an hour you need from us, right?
in
So-
person?
There's a lot of different options. I mean, they can train us and we'll, show you, as you're basically just, they're showing you how to access everything, They also have a webinar that you can do, so.
October 25th?
Yeah.
What
Did you
time?
say it's 25th or
I've
26th?
got 6 p.m. right
We have a
now.
6 p.m. community.
So we're,
engagement, don't we?
Vicky, we're attempting to move towards an online system of running our board meetings called Board Docs. I don't know if you use that. Okay, well, none of us are that expert at it. And so
we can
we're getting trained.
we can do a because I don't know if all of us can be there because we have a 6:30 Aspen library, right, that day?
Yeah.
So Yeah.
That day would be really
we have
hard.
a community engagement.
We're hiring them. We tell them when to do it. So if this is gonna conflict, we'll tell them another date.
I mean, they're here in town on that date. We get our training 8 to noon, so,
Okay.
it can be an AM thing, it can be a PM thing, they can do it right after.
Can
that. It
some of
doesn't
you
have to
guys
be
do
an
afternoon
evening.
and some of you do webinars? Will that work?
Webinar.
I
would
can
be
do a
best for
webinar,
me.
but not live at that time. I'm not free during that afternoon.
No? Anybody free that afternoon? Since they are here, we can tab onto them. Otherwise, we can have Bobby or we can do the webinar. So, because they won't come back into town. That's the only catch on that one.
The webinar, can that be done at any time?
Yeah, webinar can be done normally.
I'll do a webinar.
Webinar?
Yeah, I'll have to do that too.
Webinar?
I will too. You're just gonna send us information on how to do that?
I can do the, I can be here.
I'll do the live on the afternoon. So if he's from 8 to 12, they are doing maybe
You
that
do
1
what?
o'clock.
Yeah.
Wes, that she
1 o'clock work for you, Wes?
Yep, and it's just 1 hour?
Yes.
Okay.
For board, yep.
So
I'll
October
confirm with
25th at
him
1 p.m.
Sometime he wants to do that. I mean, he might have to do a lunch thing, if we're going straight 8 to noon, we'll see what we're at.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get him sandwiches.
Oh, 1 p.m. I can do live. I just can't do anything after that.
Yeah, so 1 to 2, then
Okay.
at least Wes and I will be here, and if Robin can join.
I
Matt,
can do that.
I can't, and I just realized I have a conflict on the 12th of December.
You have a conflict on 12th of
Yeah.
December? How about move it to 13th?
What happened to the 11th?
We are out on the 10th. You want to do the 11th right back to back?
I eat dinner both nights.
Really? There's no intermittent fasting?
I should, but no.
It's actually nice to do them back to back. It's good for the candidates.
Before, let me
They don't
check to
know.
make sure I have the right date in my head. I want to say that's,
Even 11th is a
no,
no?
the 11th I think can work. I just want to make sure I have the right date in my
book it
head
then.
for the 12th.
So leave it until you hear back
Yeah,
from Matt.
I'll let you know
Okay.
tonight or tomorrow morning.
Okay.
So we can just tell our family we're out for a solid week.
Yeah.
Leave you a picture.
Okay, and we'll do it 25th at 1 or so with the people.
Yeah, I'll
Okay.
confirm with him too. yeah.
Okay. Any more dates that we need to get on our calendars?
No, I
Yeah,
think that book's me
that is-
solid.
Oh, boy.
Or can Joe? Joe and I are both booked.
On 25th?
We can do webinar.
We'll come up with,
Mhm.
we'll make them do it. I really, you just have to hear me vent a little bit. When we're paying the freight and hiring a company, they have to accommodate us
Mhm.
rather than dictate to us. And it's a day we've both been committed for a long time. We'll figure it all out, but we're the consumer.
I agree.
Oh, that's on tape too.
All right.
Hope there are no relatives in town.
Okay. Okay, so we're done with the dates. Topics for future meetings. Any topics
I
that you can
had,
think of?
I had a thought.
Yes.
Uh-oh.
Think.
Uh-oh.
There you go, thinking again.
Buses. Is there any way to do audits on bus routes?
It's Abe's
I mean,
department. He's
and
not.
I talked to Abe
It-
about it real briefly. He
Audit,
said
you
I should
mean
ask.
number of kids that actually ride that are
I
assigned to the
mean,
bus?
they've got such a monopoly, a stranglehold on us, and then they keep raising the costs on it. And you hear all these stories about them not being run efficiently. I think we need to do due diligence on, are we getting,
Well,
I don't know if there's
Maybe
any
I
way
can
we can
address
do it
that a
or
little
not.
bit.
Yeah,
the biggest issue is the transportation piece rises and falls based on the economy. It's all about drivers. And when the economy is humming along a little better and there's low unemployment, drivers are really hard to get. They've had to up their, I believe it's at near $18 an hour with benefits. Now, drivers get benefits as of like 10 years ago or so, which, they deserve. And we're not saying that people do or don't deserve it. The problem with that is there's no way to make up for anything, and it's not even fuel costs, it's labor.
Right.
And so the only way they can do it is through a rigid bidding system. And so these contracts are bid out. It's not like you make a deal with this company because you like their buses or you like them. It's the bidding process. So we happen to be with a reputable company. We have a very
I'm not saying we
company.
are, I'm just
Yeah.
I'm curious because I live on a street where there are multiple buses that are parked there for hours on end.
Well, that
So
we
you
can
wonder-
do something about.
That one, well, it's not us, it's for a different district. But so you always sit there and wonder, well, we have people just hanging out at home with the buses and
I think a lot of a bus driver's day, unfortunately, is spent waiting around.
Right,
But
yeah.
I think,
It's just-
to your point, I have heard numerous reports. I don't really ask my own children how full is your bus, but I've heard numerous reports about people saying their buses seem to be half empty. Now, does that mean there aren't really kids that were supposed to be on the bus and they're getting rides because of extracurriculars or whatever? Or is it really that we're running inefficient routes, which is a different question?
We only
I don't
had-
think we're running
I
inefficient.
know
routes.
Abe keeps really good track on
Yeah.
that. But we'll ask him.
I asked
We'll
him
run
at
your
the-
Well, I
question.
brought it up at the
Last-
beginning of the school year,
Mhm.
because I found it was odd that, my kids are in dual language, and the dual language kids in my development, they're all on different buses. So there's approximately, I think, 6 buses that come into my development,
Mhm.
and I just found that, at the time unnecessary. But, I mean,
Yeah,
my kids are on a full bus, so I don't know how that happens, but
This is close to rocket science. It really is how these buses, how students are assigned to buses and at capacity, and then, go home with a friend, have a note, go this way, go that way. And it's rare that you see them all filled, parents picking them up, dentist appointment, doctor appointment, all these kinds of things impact it. But you have to plan for the eventuality that every kid that's
Let us
assigned is going to
mention
ride.
to Abe that the question came up again.
I asked
We'll-
him after the last community engagement meeting, he said, go ahead and ask.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's just,
we'll talk to
I
him.
mean, transportation is a huge cost, and what do we
It's-
have, one
it
bid
is
come
state
back? We only
reimbursable,
had
so-
one bid come back, so
Mhm.
I felt we were kind of in a stranglehold,
Oopsie.
That's
with-
kind of how it is pretty much everywhere.
So-
well, and I mean, there's a
Companies
driver's. I
Yeah,
mean,
no
bids?
company
the
can
shortage
bid
in the
for our
transportation industry.
business because they can't find the drivers to staff that.
Right.
Right.
So it's almost like a self-defeating prophecy. You really have a hard time going out, encouraging somebody else to take the bid, undercut the other bid, but then not be able to put the drivers in the seats.
I mean, the
And it's
bids are all
important
open.
who's driving.
so
We don't want just anybody driving.
The bids are open after what's
Yes.
awarded, so everybody, all the other
Right.
competitors can see
Yeah,
what
this
we're
is no
paying.
secret,
So they can
yeah.
look at it and say, well, I can't compete, so why would they bid?
Well, I believe one of the bus companies that came to the bid meeting or they filed a FOIA to get
Yep.
all that information, and then they didn't submit a bid. So
They said,
No, the deal with our current bus company and the neighboring elementaries works because we've got our own route self-contained. It used to be, we all piggybacked each other. And the high school, 70, 73, and the starting and ending times, it was sort of difficult to manage. Now it's really us doing our own. But you've got to have a service. And I talked to the Benish family. I asked them about why have the prices gone up that high? And the answer was really simple. It's purely labor costs.
It's good economy. It's hard to find bus drivers.
Yeah.
Speaking of the start times, though, I don't know that I want to put it as a topic for a future agenda right now with everything else we have going on, but it had been mentioned several times over the last couple of years about reevaluating some of these start times with the research about performance of adolescents starting at a certain hour. So, you know, when it comes to bus routes, I know that it kind of fixes us into this, but if it's our obligation to do what's best, you know, when you know better, you do better. Where's the cost benefit analysis of changing the start time and it affecting the bus routes? And what are the flexibilities that we have around that would be a question I would have eventually.
That's one that if you tinker with the double decking routes,
Mm-hmm.
will shoot the costs even more.
But does that mean we don't explore any flexibilities that we might
That's
have?
always, I think that's always on the table. You look at what can you do to preserve the day. Our days end kind of early.
Mm-hmm. But they start mighty early.
But I'm just talking to myself, you know, I don't know how Joe feels about this. You know, as a superintendent, I would say, I really want to get a good sense of my community. I want to do some surveying. I want to know how do people really feel about that, because there's a lot of folks, their days are built, their childcare is built around it, where their children go before and after school is built around that. And so you want to do, as you look at these things, as little as possible to upset people's lives, because it's tough enough to get your kids off when you work. And I know we have a large population with both dual income families.
Oh, I agree, and I don't want to discuss something without it being on the agenda. I'm just concerned if we're here for student outcomes and we know that there's measurable outcomes that can be improved upon by changing start times, we need to evaluate whether that's something we think would work for our student population, and eventually everybody adjusts. I mean, Lincolnshire's changed it recently, Vernon Hills High School changed it this year. I mean, people eventually adjust. It's just a matter of, I do think community input's important, but ultimately we're the ones sitting here with a sign in front of us that we have to advocate for all students. Everybody else only has to advocate for their own family. So,
And I think it could be a topic for future, because, you know,
Good
after,
topic for the new
because
superintendent.
one of the, because the kindergarten, if the kindergarten building goes into effect,
mm-hmm,
then that is going to affect
right,
bus routes and
Right.
times and everything anyway, because we're going to have to
right.
adjust a start time
Yeah.
of a new building
That
to
would be a
get
good
into
time
anyway.
to research.
Yeah, this
Do
may
it.
be a post-New Year discussion, but yeah.
Okay, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Julie,
No, motion by Robin.
motion by Robin, seconded by Julie. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 7 ayes, 0 nays. We are
Robin
We
and
have a
Julie
closed
have to
session.